Hello everyone, my name is Raul Perez and I'm back here to tell you guys about Adobe Aero and give you guys just a quick rundown on how to use it and show you guys a few examples on the possible products that you can use to bring your art, no matter if it's 3D or 2D, into reality with augmented reality. You can go on Adobe Aero's website for more information, but just a quick gist of it, it's a program that lets you place 2D and 3D objects in a three-dimensional space with augmented reality with your phone's camera. You can go on.
So we're gonna get started with a quick demo project here. This time I'm gonna test out the surface anchor really quick. So I'm just gonna name this surface test. I wanna launch my file. Um, and so here, here are the controls for how to move any object you place. Here are the controls to navigate. So this is kind of like a way to rotate the camera. This is how you pan the camera. And this here is kind of how you like zoom in and out. And you can always decide you want a vertical or a horizontal surface, but this time I'm going to use a horizontal surface. Yeah, there are plenty of models and tools and assets you can use here that Adobe Aero already has. There's even animations. But just to give you a rundown, I'm going to use this simple cylinder. When you click it, there's a lot of like controls here. So you can grab the arrows, you can like slide it across the surface or move it up and down. If you grab this little box, you can scale the whole thing. And this lock controls if it scales and it keeps the proportions. So if you take it off, then you can skew it and stretch it however you want. And then you can always lock it again once you're satisfied with it. And if you grab this little like spheres, you can rotate it actually, again, to suit your needs. And you can do it with any of the assets here, but I'm going to delete it. And I want to import my own model instead that I made in Blender, and I export it as an OBJ. So you find in your file format, and you select it, and you import it. Depending on your file size, it might take it a bit longer or shorter, but this one was able to load fast, luckily. It's way too big, so I'm going to use the controls that I've already explained to scale it down and rotate it and move it to however I want. And once I'm happy with the result, I can go up to the little share button at the top, and it will generate a link and a QR code to share with others. And now that the link's been generated, you can copy it, share it to someone, or you can print out or save the QR code. And someone just has to scan it, and they'll be able to access your file immediately and see it in AR.
So now that your project on Adobe Aero is completed, and after we have gotten either a link or a QR code to use, the QR code is the easiest to share with people because they can just scan their phones and the project will pop up. But if I open up the camera app and then I scan the QR code, it takes me to Adobe Aero, and it takes a while depending on the size of your projects. It takes a bit to load your project, but once it's completed, for example, this is a surface anchor. You see that it's trying to map um, the objects to like the floor around me, and so if I tap on the screen now, it locks it into place, and now I have my 3D models in AR and augmented reality that's anchored to the floor. In other settings, you can also anchor to like walls and other flat surfaces. But for this demonstration, I just used a model that I had made before on this two-dimensional horizontal plane.
Now I'm going to do an image anchor project. So you're selected, name it whatever you want. And now the important thing is that when you generate your new project, it's gonna ask you to actually give it the image that I want you to lock onto. So if I find it here in my file directory, you see I call it GD poster. And when I open it, it sometimes takes a bit, but then it pops in, and so everything will be fixated onto this image particular. And for this project, I'm going to use a Photoshop file that I've used, an illustration that I made with many layers to show you guys how you can bring your 2D arts to life with more depth than you could in AR. So right now the orientation is kind of all out of whack. But again, just using the same tools that I've used before, you can rotate it, and if you hold on the shift, then you can kind of snap it to certain angles and make it really precise. You can be, pretty precise within this app as well. So if I rotate it in, and then I'm going to push it out from away from the poster because I don't want to clip into it. I'm going to scale it up because I think default because it was like 10 centimeters or something. But then here's where the magic is, which is with the layer spacing. And so if you adjust the Z spacing, you can see that as I am decreasing it in this case, it's separating the layers even more, and they're making them pop out from each other, which is kind of what I want. You can see it here when I have to turn it around. You can also adjust it separated through like the X-axis as well and the Y-axis, very personalized. Of course, this kind of looks messy, but I just wanted to show you guys what you can do with it. And again, you can share it in the same process as always.
So same with the image anchor, same process. You scan the QR code, and then once you have it, it will load the project. Now for image anchor, you'll see that it will put it. Well, first, it will put the image that you uploaded. That's going to be the anchor, and once your camera recognizes this anchor, you'll see that it places all of your Photoshop files spaced out as you specified in Adobe Aero. And this stuff can be really cool. Again, for like digital illustrations, if you want to have a real sense of depth, you can have like the foreground, the background be the furthest back layer, and then maybe your subject stands out. There's a midground, there's a foreground, maybe there's like small details. They have a lot of options, and as you can see, just for like clarity and just to show this off, I spaced out the layers so that they have like space between the layers, as you can see there, and they're also spaced out horizontally. But you can always adjust like the X, Y, and Z, like displacement of each layer. Do keep in mind that you have to again make sure that the layers you want to show are visible. Because that's what Adobe Aero picks up whenever it reads your Photoshop file. Um, so this time I'm gonna do an image-based project. So I'm gonna select that option, and then once you start it, it's gonna tell you or prompt you to pick a location. So of course you can scroll around and you can just click on the location you want. But I'm gonna be more specific, and I'm gonna just select the college campus, and it's you here. So it takes a while, but once you're in, it gives you this kind of like satellite view. So I'm gonna pick this like field here, just give myself plenty of space to work with. And so when selected, I'm gonna start the project. Um, and when you load in, it's first gonna try to put in this like Google Maps or Google Earth looking like view, which is a great way to like, preview like the space you're working with and how it's gonna look like when you start putting in your models. So this time I'm going to work with an animated model, this jellyfish. It's very small, so I'm going to scale it up to a size that's a bit more convenient. And so now I'm going to move it out of the way into a position. Of course, when you actually have a vision for your project, you can be more specific and everything. But I'm going to have this animation animated. So I'm going to give this a trigger to start as soon as the scene loads in. And again, I'm gonna specify that I want the animation to play. You can add multiple actions or like events onto one object. Um, but I want this to be infinite, so I check the infinite box. There's so much other settings here that depending on the animation and the effect you want it to have and the experience your guest wants to have, you can change it. You can also preview it in the window here, just to get a feel, see if it clips with another object or of the sort. But I'm also going to add in this motorcycle. Again, it's too small, so I'm going to scale it up a bit for it to be more visible. I'm going to move it to a position that I would prefer. And again, I'm going to add another trigger to it. But this time, I'm going to have the trigger be on proximity enter. So as soon as you get closer to this object, it'll actually start whatever action you give it. And I'm going to let it specify that I want to play an audio. I don't want it to be infinite, but here you also have to specify how close you have to be in order for it to trigger the object. So by default it's 10 centimeters, but what if I want it to be a whole meter? So I'll make it 100 centimeters instead. So whenever I get within that range, that's when the trigger is going to happen. But I need to give it the audio file. So I have it downloaded. I got a royalty-free one. So if I find it in my files, I can select it and I can import it. And you can see that in Adobe Aero, it updated it so whenever I get close, it's going to play that specific audio that I specify. I can adjust the volume to it, to comfort. But now that it's ready, as usual, I can just share the link and give it to people so they can experience it as well. Now this time I'm going to test out the map anchor function. So I'm gonna scan the QR code, and it's gonna load the test. Since I have more 3D models in this thing, it might take a bit longer for you. But then I'll ask you like pan around to look around, and sometimes this takes a moment or two. And now that the scene is booted up, you see I did add in and change a few things just to play around a bit more. Where this is kind of like a 3D like illustration that is kind of like 3 dimensional when you step closer to it. I also added this like Morbius strip that's like turning infinitely. So this is what happens when you put an object to play on start and infinite, right? It will always be rotating like this. And then the jellyfish, this time, if I tap on it on my screen, it plays animation. So again, there's multiple triggers you could do it. The motorcycle's over there in the distance. But as you can see, I've placed these models in 3D space, and now I can access them. But do keep in mind that sometimes it might like shift around, depending on your movement and how like the lighting is. But yeah, it works mostly as intended. And with that, that concludes my like really fast like recap of what Adobe Aero is. Do keep in mind that if your project is very big, you have a lot of like models, animations, or a lot of like files going on. Then it may slow down some people's experiences on their phones, depending on both like the power of the phone and again just how heavy your scene is. So just be wary of that. Possible applications for this could just be for like fine art. If you make a sculpture in 3D, you can put that into augmented reality somewhere in the world to be able to experience it. Have your own personal gallery outside. Speaking of galleries, you can also spice up your own like fine art gallery. You can have guests point their phones or their devices at a screen or a photo or a painting, and then Adobe Aero would expand whatever file you have. You can put 3D models or Photoshop illustration or files, and separate the layers as I showed. But overall, with these basic tools, you can make almost anything you can imagine. So if you take the time to learn it, you can always come up with really cool projects from Adobe Aero. But with that, I hope that you've learned about it and you're willing to at least explore it and learn about it a bit more. And with that, I will be signing off, and I hope you guys have a good day.